Greetings, everyone. What I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be going over an article. This article is on a new California state law that has been passed affecting high schools, especially in San Diego counties. Some key concerns of coaches and administrators regarding the new policy in this article that I found are the differences in weather conditions experienced by different schools. However, they have to follow the same protocols. Another one would be when rescheduling weather appropriate times in compliance to the new guidelines. There are scheduling conflicts among all parties, meaning like administrators, coaches, and students, even their parents. There is a risk of decreased athletic output, as well as time outside of school that the athlete may have to focus on their coursework. For example, Coach Baldwin in this article mentioned, and I quote, Friday at 5 p.m., it was 95 degrees in Escondido. However, at Torrey Pines High School, 22 miles to the west, but in the same category, it was 72 degrees. So I mentioned this quote just showing an example of the new guideline not being fair by location of different schools, having to follow the same guidelines, even though the weather differences make it easier for some schools and not so easy for others to reschedule times and follow those guidelines. In terms of like disparities that schools have based on geography and climate, I don't agree that is fair. I agree with the perspective of coaches who stated that understanding and considering the health and well-being of student athletes. So they understand that that's the purpose of these guidelines. However, the guidelines should be more diversified to consider specific areas for each academic establishment, which it currently does not. I have another example from Damon Baldwin, who is a coach and athletic director at Ramona High School. He's located inland and elaborates on the concept that the failure of consideration for coaches who have other obligations, it's prevalent. Some coaches have a side, like coaching is usually their side gig or like something they do additionally, maybe a hobby. So a lot of times high school coaches do other things to supplement their income. So guidelines like this make it harder for them to tend to their other obligations. And so that can both lead to affecting both the coaches, but also the student athletes. Potential impacts that the heat policies have on student athletes, I think stress, definitely stress with trying to figure out the scheduling aspects and how that goes with their academics now. Their inability to develop adequate practice skills, maybe if they're new and like they're not be able to get the reps that they potentially can, or exhaustion from long hours spent at school. Being at school like 10 to 12 hours can be a lot. A lot of times people are able to focus on their schoolwork better outside of campus or at home. Those athletes who may not have reliable transportation. So if someone, for example, is 14 years old and they rely heavily on maybe a school bus to get to school, now they're having to change that schedule to 6 a.m., 6 p.m., and maybe that they don't have reliable transportation. Maybe their parent isn't able to take them at that time or have other siblings or is still working. So I think that's a big issue that students may be battling with this new guideline. Um, if I were an athletic trainer in coastal San Diego, um, with this guideline, I think that it would be ideal. I think that the guidelines will be perfect, be fitting. I don't think it would be an issue. If I was an athletic trainer in San Diego in inland school, I think this will be a huge issue, and I would want to maybe team up with other athletic trainers that are local to possibly do something about, advocating for a change. And that concludes, um, yeah, my review.